I was looking through yet another pile of papers. In the dusty, little office belonging to some state auction department, buried in another stack of papers, I began feeling a suffocation of legals and paperwork. I was a 27-year-old doing something that I actually detested, trying to figure out what it meant whilst nobody looked from seemingly the last place on earth imaginable, having inherited shares in this big-shot company, as my dad had tried and failed before he passed away. Callum, the bored young man who took turns, strutting all day long across the gap that bridged his part of life from mine, was on duty. His eyes met mine not quite as he shuffled through my papers. "Aurora, looks like you are the lucky one who has inherited her fortune." He sounded so low, and when he added the last part, I detected another voice within. Was it curiosity? My smile tried to force back on. Lucky feels more like I inherited a migraine. As in, half of these documents. I don't know what any of this is. Callum glanced up, and a real smile broke his tired expression. "Yeah, it's a mess, isn't it? But F-E-R-L-T, I will guide thee. We'll get it sorted." His patience was unexpected as he combed through each document. Clerks just wanted you out the door, but Callum went over every single form of what it meant, and how I needed one. It was refreshing. "Thanks, Callum." Then, after we were done, I never in a million years would have thought to find anyone who is actually decent from a place like this, I said. His shoulders lifted slightly, and the corners of his mouth quirked. "We're not all robots yet. Besides, it is a refreshing change of pace. It feels nice helping someone, you know." I laughed, the sound clean and clear like nothing within this bureaucratic maze. "I guess I owe you one then, so thanks for saving me from drowning in paperwork. Height of hospitality. Coffee on me." "Coffee sounds amazing, but let me take you." Callum stood up, scooping the neater stack of papers together. "You've got more than enough to deal with already," he said in response as she began walking towards his study where privacy promised silence from both men about all this, at least for now. When I stood up and walked out of my office this time, it was different. The paperwork shit was still there, but somehow felt lighter. Callum took us to a local cafe, and the small, intimate cafe walked so far from those clinical government buildings behind. Heights I can never touch on. We slipped conversationally into as we settled at a table with our coffees. You name it, we talked about thing and nothing. Work, hobbies, life can be a royal pain when you don't see things coming. "You know, I never could have imagined you meeting someone over there." "A real person," I said. Callum arched an eyebrow and grinned. "Someone real? Oh, did you think I was a robot deployed by the government that existed exclusively to ruin your day?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "No, it's more like everyone is too involved in / intrigued by their own shit. Someone who listens, someone that actually sees you wino." He chuckled and took a drink of his coffee. "I get it. If it comes to people, life's too short. Be real. We are all just feeling this out on a day-by-day basis." It was not a love, Care Delevingne, and Willa Holland kind of story or those Papa Jack voice on the radio stories. It began by passing each other with smiles, some real compassion, and a cup of coffee later. And sometimes that's enough to make a plain day the first day of forever. After that day at the cafe, things exploded with Callum in ways I could never have foreseen. We shortly reconnected outside of all that legal and paperwork mess. During one of those evenings, together with Callum and his wine and my Dr. Pepper all over the place on our old couch in sweatpants, trying not to get crumbs everywhere from plates piled high with take-out boxes, he mentioned this concept that would shape everything forever after. "Hey, I've been contemplating over," his words began in an unsure voice, and that was not like him at all. He was the most confident of all my friends, always thinking outside of the box. "You inherit that. I know the market. We could go somewhere on our own. Something big. I stopped, caught in the act of lifting a slice to my mouth. Start something like what? A business. The idea seemed crazy. Okay, so I had some money, but this is a whole new business cat's game. Yeah, a business. Do you fucking understand me? He turned, so his eyes would meet mine, his face lighting up like it always did when he talked about something important. You and I both that the agriculture sector is on a roll, right? What if we dive into that? An auto parts wholesaler, for example. There's a market for it, and we could do some damage with your capital, my connections. My pizza laid down, owned to some curiosity by now. But the thing is, Callum, I know nothing at all about running a business. And what about your job? He waved it away. It is literally a dead-end job. You know this. And you're smart. You'll learn. We'll learn together. And he was persuasive, which is what got me hesitating. Callum, it's a huge risk. What if it doesn't work out? I could lose everything. I was terrified of screwing it up. But what if it does? As long as you try. Across the couch, his hand found mine, and he squeezed it reassuringly. You won't be alone in this. We stand shoulder to shoulder through it all. Your mom is probably getting on your case about not blowing that money, isn't she? It is our opportunity to be wise and grand. I couldn't help but laugh. Do you have an answer to everything? He had an infectious level of enthusiasm. Okay, let's say we do this. It's going to have you be a flawless plan, and I mean flawless, Callum. No winging it. He was practically bouncing with excitement now. Of course. I'll draft something up. We'll review over it together, fine-tune it to ensure it's perfect. And with that a partnership was born. It was just a whirlwind of planning, meeting with lawyers to write up a partnership agreement and constant research. Even on the days my head was spinning, all I needed to see, Callum so passionate, so dedicated. Callum made me sign a prep before the wedding. We were going over some business plans one night when he said, "It's just smart. At least if that happens, we will be definitive in knowing where each one of us stands. These perfect half splits, all clean and easy as pie." I have to admit I could see where he was coming from, but my terms were a bit of weight too. All right, I get it. She is happy to share, but I want something in there too. Maybe it's a loyalty code. If one of us cheats and the marriage ends, that person loses all interest in the business. He seemed surprised, but he replied, "Fair enough. And sure, we can add it. And then BLC. I'm not going to cheat on you already, slut. Yup, I love you too." It was a hard conversation, but it felt true to me, so I let her know that we were no longer life partners. By establishing strict guidelines, it kind of felt that we were creating an amazing base not only for the business, but also in our partnership. The day we signed a lease for our warehouse space still seems like someone must be playing some kind of joke on us. They were scary and exciting words to hear, standing in front of that deserted building, seeing visions of our business all around me. Is this really happening? More to myself than Callum, I murmured. Then he snuck up from behind, wrapping his arms around my waist. This is happening. It's gonna be great. Me and you, we are going to do something special here. I leaned back and felt his hands slip around to hold me, daring for the first time to believe in the future we were creating together. It was more than just the business. It was suspecting the universality of us against the backdrop. What I didn't know yet was the hardships that would try their best to tear us apart. Even so, I was just about as hopeful and excited to take on the rest of my life with the man that I loved. All the noise coming from our warehouse was music to my ears. With our shelves full of parts and orders coming in fast, we were enjoying a well-earned high. Callum and I realized that together, as business partners for 9 years now, we had done it all yet again. Our small walk on this world of agricultural spare parts, profits ever zooming into heights neither of us dared to have dreamed. It was an exciting thing to have something that we created together from scratch grow like that. However, with growth comes growing pains. One night, while drowning in orders and invoices that were collecting like a horror movie sequel, I announced loudly, "We need more hands on deck. I have enough to do. All this paperwork is just overwhelming. Callum, as the worried type often to be met with disapproving looks, scowled at the idea. I don't know, babe. More hands means more people that are not us we have to trust with our baby. No way in hell we're letting random people with their hands all over our financials and legal shit. I understood his reasons, but we had to agree on something. What? You want me to do something for once it? I met his eye. An apology and a challenge at the same time. Jesus Pete, as it is, I have more than enough to do. You could become credentialed in accounting and legal management. It'd be our little secret. The idea of returning to a school and also running an academic company was more than daunting. Like, seriously, when do you expect me to find time for that? He said, as if it was that easy, dude. At night, weekends. Okay. I know that there's so much content in this letter, it might have taxed upon one of our core email pillars. Brevity. You're brilliant, babe. You'll ace it in no time. So that's what I did. When I was not working at our retail business by day, that is, and also some nights, I might have been struggling with tasks I never dreamed of, reading books in the middle of balance sheets, but my dream was still alive, and to keep it that way had become a full-time job. As the company grew, so did my responsibilities. More salespeople were added, and as a result I took on full responsibility for our server infrastructure. I took over those areas of responsibility, the document mumbo-jumbo, accounting and legal. As Callum took to managing such things as the money, processes and growth of a company but faraway pages rather than fax machines, this did involve him hitting the road quite often, and then I got left alone in charge on our, in those days, little fort. At night, with Callum on his trip and work piling up higher than the Rockies, everything felt very heavy indeed. After the office light turned off, long after everyone had left the building, and I was all alone at my desk in front of a computer screen, this is not what I thought, signing up, muttering under my breath. The silence was broken by the sound of the phone ringing. It was Callum, from whatever corner of the world he'd been booked to conference in. Hey, how's my superstar manager? I rubbed my tired eyes and sighed. Buried under paperwork, actually. This is insane, Callum. I'm just struggling to stay afloat. The line went silent for a moment. I'm sorry, babe. I wish I could be there to assist, but man, you are hanging tough. And I would never been able to do it without you. They were supposed to be comforting words, but it was more fodder for how far apart the miles between us had been stretching as he made work trips. I miss you, Callum owned, and us not always being so overshadowed by all of this. I know. I miss you too, but where do we think this is headed? He even tried to make a joke. One invoice at a time, we are building our future. I made a half-hearted attempt at laughter, and even to me, it held no joy. Yeah, one invoice at a time. Only, promise me you will return, right? I promise. Oh, and by the way, when I come back, let's take a day off. Us, two friends chilling with no business. Deal? Deal, I said, holding on to that one small slice of the mundane in an otherwise victorious and tumultuous reality. Blinking back tears, I hung up and turned to my work as the screen blurs before me. Was this not the dream? Then why did I feel like it was slipping through my fingers? Nearly killed me. The pressures of our fast and booming business costed me more than just money. The staying up late, the stress every morning and night, and that endless to-do list. I barely had time for myself, which self-care was almost non-existent in equation of my everyday being. The changes were so slow I didn't even see them at first, but when you compare the months, my reflection in mirror showed me somebody I could hardly remembered. My body had more weight, my shine was a price, heavier, and so new but so tired. My reflection in the mirror had a bit differently as well. The way Callum treated me had also changed. He was now pulling in even more hours, using the office to cover long nights out and trips without me. He would always say, just wrapping up a few loose ends, or he'd be going on a trip that was for work, so therefore it was required. I tried to shake the feeling that I got, saying, You're just imagining something wrong. After that was the party with his business colleagues. Honestly, I was kinda excited about it. A break from the grind and maybe even some more QT view of Callum in amongst us both hitting the pavement hard. His reaction, however, took me by surprise when I said it. I don't know what. No. Well, he said, not looking at me. I was stunned. What? Why not? We were both invited, right? His face contorted, discomfort written all over it as he sighed. It's just, you know, the wives of all the partners, they're so polished, and you've changed. I do not wish for you to feel like a fish out of water. Maybe I should just go by myself. That was like an almighty slap in the face. Changed, out of place. When have your appearance ever outweighed my heart? Are you embarrassed by me now or something? My voice bore the hurt, but it was mixed with an anger that continued to grow. You know that's not what I mean, he said hastily, but it was too last. You know I'm just trying to do right by the business, that's all. I was hearing it, I could not believe it. This was not the same Callum that I fell in love with back when he would tell me every day how stunning I look. I used to embarrass him, and now here he was, embarrassed by me. Our life together was real on the wall. If you think I am at then leave, have fun partying. I spit the words with my burning tongue. He may have tried to say something else, maybe trying to recalibrate or appease me, but I tuned out. I looked off, a blend of heartbreak and utter disappointment running through me. That evening he walked away to be with his attractive friends, but I had stayed behind crying that the unspoken fractures in our marriage, some obvious for years, sufficed to convince him of my flaws. The air inside our home was hot and filled with poison one day after another, turning the warm feelings of hope dashed upon rocks like wicked sirens' call into a battleground. Their party incident had been a major wound in our relationship, and thereafter, it just got worse. The man that used to gaze at me like I was the single woman on this planet, Callum, began picking flaws in all of my actions, especially appearance. When I came home on an evening to relax after a hard day of work, his face in the same repelled appearance. He flung a pamphlet onto the coffee table. It was to join a gym. Thought you could use this. Might help with, you know. He gestured at me. The brochure went in my handbag, and I turned to look at him, feeling angry yet hurt. What do you mean by that? I say, though I am already well aware. It says you should work on how you look. The woman that I married isn't quite who you are anymore. His retort fired like daggers. I got up and brushed off his insensitive comment because I wanted him to think that it did not affect me. But they did, deeply. You know I'm swamped with work, Callum. Lol, at when am I supposed to have time for a gym? Damn excuse, he said, his patience wearing thin. Asterisk, if it mattered to you, you'd find the time. But no, you prefer to just sit in your room and what? Rather be in the job that keeps our business going. The job you can't help out with because you are always networking. The bitterness spilled in my voice. He scoffed, turning away. Oh, you know what else getting old? Your attitude is. It's not just about the work. You've completely given up and it's shameful. Those words, I stood in shock, the pain hardening like lead into a rage of decades. How could he say such things? That the man I loved, built a life with, would be so callous. But it didn't stop there. Gradually, his remarks grew in number and as hurtful. He told me I was lazy, fat, and a shadow of the woman he married. Every word whittled away just a little piece of my self-confidence of who I am. I started not looking in mirrors, shying away from his skin-grazing caresses and feeling unworthy again. And the nights he didn't come home. The first time, pure panic. Where the third time, I was so very numb. When I bravely asked where he was, he'd sneer back, none of your business. Concentrate on only what you are supposed to. At the lowest of my lows, I had hit a breaking point where it became too burdensome to carry the weight of silence anymore. One evening, my voice, shaky but determined, finally broke the silence. Bro, I cannot go on like this. My heart was now coming through loud and clear. We need to discuss that divorce, how we are going to do business. The mere idea of ripping apart all we produced together was several moments unrealistic, however needed for my own sanity. Callum was too filled with anger and shock to respond. "You want to walk away now?" he thundered. "But for half, after everything I went through to get this." He said them coldly. They were bladed words meant to slice and keep me low. "I built this company." His voice cut through me over and over, in places where he could no longer reach, from across the pools of time that separated us, mocking, "You're nothing without me." He hoped the threats of a long legal process using many resources to haul my ass through court would scare me off. Instead, they only hardened me in theirs. "Callum, it is not all about business," I objected, coming out with a stronger voice than I felt. "Respect is what's been missing for far too long in this sport." I was in the bathroom splashing cold water on my face when I heard Callum's phone buzzing with a new message. I don't know what came over me, but impulsively I picked it up, and the evidence was so raw that there were no remnants of denial left. Raunchy, sexually charged texts from another woman conveyed the same phenomenon of cheating that we feel in our bones to be wrong. I resorted to scrolling through vacation plans intended for two, all planned without me. My heart literally sank. Every message I read, a piece of the old me just died, and in its place, something strong had replaced. I did not even think of asking Callum about what I found out. Instead, I silently wrote my story, a silent vow to myself that this was mine and would belong only to me. It was not always about straight-up revenge. This was about taking my pride back, my freedom. My heart was heavy, but I had to do it. Callum's betrayal was more than a kick to the teeth. It rang as an ear-piercing alarm that I should actively be safeguarding what earned me thousands hours. After months of too much time, I walked down to our office, running into a battlefield where formerly my dreams associated with a place. Initial, a new examine of each one document and consideration, linked to our organization. It is doing exactly what we needed to do, to see more clearly than ever before, and in great detail, what we had created together, and then seeing it all at risk. Finding out about the depth of Callum's lies, right down to a car he had purchased for his mistress and sworn blind wasn't true, only solidified my resolve. I spent the night and collected all my proof, in duplicate just in case, preparing myself for what came next. Equipped with the paperwork, I went hunting for his best attorney, who is reputable and a fighter. My voice is firm, but my hands are shaking. I need to file for divorce. And when it comes to the business we established, there is one thing: I will fight for what's mine. Experienced attorney that appreciates fairness listened as I spilled my side of the story. After reading the prenuptial agreement and available evidence of infidelity, he paused with a reassuring calm. "With the context and evidence you have presented, it looks like a pretty darn strong case. We'll make sure you get what's coming to you no matter how long it takes." It was not soon before a legal shitstorm erupted. This tried my soul more than I can say, and has for emotional resilience. But amid it all, I clung to the faith that right would ultimately make might. And prevail they did. The court accepted our prenuptial agreement and the proof of Callum's infidelity. Well, the judgment was in my favor eventually. I was then able to go on and run the previous businesses we had built together, as they were all in his name, with a nice slice of our combined assets. I also got some money for the hurt feelings Callum gave me. It was a bittersweet victory. The business that was once the hallmark of our union and joint enterprise now belonged solely to me. On the one hand, I was relieved to know that my financial and professional future was much more secure than it had been 6 months prior. On the other hand, knowing how our relationship collapsed left me a bit sad. Nevertheless, when I reached the courthouse and walked out with that final decree in my hand, a whole heap of burden floated away from me. The fight was over. I stood my ground. I fought for what was just and fair, all the while communicating parenting strategies that supported healthy development, and stalking triumphant. Not a simple case of business or the assets, it was about taking back my pride and self-esteem. It was a month since the court had delivered its judgment. With my head still and some new contracts that came across my desk, a phone call broke the silence. Callum's name flashed on the caller ID, a name I hadn't seen or thought about in weeks. I hesitated for a second, but I gave in to the curiosity and picked up. "Hey, Aurora, Callum speaking," he said in a forced chirp of his usual geniality. "I have been thinking about us. Everything that happened. I'm really sorry, you know. I messed up big time." I let out a short laugh in disbelief. "You're sorry now? After everything?" "I know. I mean, look, it's past midnight now, and all, but seriously, man. 000 is not helping right now, okay?" he said, sounding desperate. "I mean, it kind of didn't work out, and I'm trying to get a job. Honestly, I was hoping that you could help me with a job at the company." Actually, my mouth dropped open in complete shock. A favor from the man who betrayed me, threatened to take everything away, wanted. It was almost laughable. I struggled to keep my voice composed, but there's no way I can sound like the level-headed businessman in this conversation, never with Callum. "You cheat, lie, and try to drag my name through the mud, then you want me to give you a job? You've got some nerve. Listen, I know that makes it sound bad, but trust me, man, I'm here in a hole. I'll take anything, really. Give me a break, is all I ask." Exhaling long and hard, I felt this calm yet questioning acceptance. "Callum, the answer is no. I've moved on. Yes, you have done so for long, but guess what? They are doing just fine, in fact exceptionally well, better than ever. Will soon be wrapping up on another great year, and last time I checked, without the main catch had been undone. I suggest you do the same. Move on." The phone was malfunctioning for a moment. "So that's it then? So you're just gonna spaz and peace out on me like that?" The call finally came to an end before I blocked his number without a second thought. Bye, Callum. It was symbolic, but it mattered. I was closing the book on that chapter of my life forever. Over the subsequent weeks and months, I devoted all my energy to that business. Revenue was growing, we were opening new markets, and I struck a couple of big deals with partners. I was doing well, the business was flourishing. In hindsight, I see Callum's treachery was the heart of something new, painful, but a restorer. This, in turn, made me rethink my existence, what I viewed as footing and aspiration. That painful time had turned me from a victim into an empowered victor, back in the saddle and heading to my dreams.
"5 years have passed since I began regretting my divorce. Suddenly, my former in-laws got in touch, and now I'm about to reunite with my ex-wife. With a mix of emotions, I broke the silence with, 'Long time, no see,' but her response surprised me. 'My name is Keith Miller, a regular 40-year-old office worker. 5 years ago, I divorced my wife, Lily, whom I had been with since our student days. I met her in high school when she moved into my neighborhood, and our families became close. Lily was bright and lively, always making everyone smile. I was a serious and somewhat gloomy boy, but Lily befriended me, and our relationship continued through college. When we were 21, our families had dinner together. Lily's father, a bit tipsy, joked, 'There's talk of Lily marrying the son of my company president.' Emboldened by the alcohol, I blurted out, 'I'm the one who will marry Lily.' I must have had feelings for her from the beginning. Amid everyone's teasing, I still remember her blushing in the corner of the room. True to my declaration, we got married when we were 28. We supported each other's careers, and our families were overjoyed. Keith, true to your word, as expected, Lily teased me about that night at the dinner. Our newlywed life was blissful. Just having a wife waiting at home made all the work stress disappear. Since we had known each other for so long, we never ran out of things to talk about, and her cheerfulness brightened my mood. However, those days didn't last. After I turned 30, my work became busier, and business trips became more frequent. As I got busier, I found myself unable to focus on our family life. You know, maybe it's time we think about having kids, Lily would hint, but I couldn't respond. It wasn't that I had stopped liking her. I thought maybe when work calms down, we could return to how things used to be. But finally, when we were 35, after a typical business trip and preparing for the next, came home to find the house unusually tidy. There was Lily with a resolved look on her face. Let's get a divorce. If we continue like this, even the happy memories will turn sad. Her expression was one I had never seen in all our years together. That was when I realized how selfish I had been. Regrets came too late. We went through with the divorce, and I lost contact with Lily and her parents. The days that followed were terrible. I went through the motions at work, but my heart wasn't in it. Colleagues, aware of the situation, tried to introduce me to new people, but I wasn't interested. After all, Lily was the only woman I had ever known. I lived as if crushed by guilt. 5 years have passed. I am now turning 40 alone and feeling lonelier day by day. The regrets only grow, and memories of Lily flash in front of me like scenes from a past life. Remembering the days we met, the evenings we spent walking home together, and our newlywed life. The longer the relationship, the heavier the loneliness that weighs on me. I was sure I would never see her again. One day, as I was slowly coming to terms with this, I got a call from Lily's parents. They said they wanted to meet and talk. Seeing them much older made me realize how time had passed, and I was no different. They didn't scold me, but gently asked, "Keith, what do you think about Lily?" I shared my feelings of regret and apology for the past 5 years. They just poured out of me. I wanted to see her just one more time. At that moment, her father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Would you remarry Lily?" His words reached my ears clearly, and every other sound was blocked out. As hard as I tried, my brain couldn't catch up. Seeing my stunned expression, he started to say, "If you are," then his wife cut him off, saying, "Let's wait until you meet Lily," murmuring with downcast eyes. They took me, and we got into a taxi. We arrived at a major university hospital. I could only follow them, not understanding why. The person lying in the hospital bed was indeed Lily. Her face was calm as she slept, not showing the 5 years that had passed. She even seemed younger. Her mother gently approached the bedside and spoke to her. Lily opened her eyes sleepily and looked straight at me. "It's been a while," I managed to say. "Who are you?" She definitely said that. Thinking it was some kind of joke, I looked at her parents' faces, but they both looked down. "It's me, Keith." At my words, her eyes widened. "Are you Keith?" From behind me, her father whispered quietly, "Lily has lost her memory." It felt as if time had stopped. I doubted if it was a dream, but the trembling of my hands told me it was real. After our separation, Lily had returned to her hometown and was working there. However, one day after work, she was involved in an accident and rushed to the emergency room. She broke several bones in her upper body, but was not in danger of losing her life. When she woke up, she had lost all her memories. They said it might be temporary and could come back soon. Her father had taken me outside the hospital room to talk. It was hard to believe, but her expressions and actions made it understandable. Still, her memory remained vague. She could barely remember her childhood and family, but other details were lost. Lily's memory was jumbled, with names and faces eluding her. Recently, though, there had been a change. Her father told me that she had started to remember fragments of her days with me, but the timeline was messed up and her memories were all mixed up. However, she didn't remember my face or that we had been married and divorced. She only remembered the happy times she had with me. Those words made my body tremble. Lily thought of me as a lover, not as her husband. Her parents couldn't bring themselves to tell her the truth. After discussing it, her parents decided it was best for her to meet me since she wanted to see me. Whether to tell her about the divorce was left up to me. If I told her, she might remember everything, but she might also drift away from me again. Uncertain what to do, I found myself alone with her in the hospital room. Do you really not remember? I'm sorry. I remembered that someone named Keith was important to me, but I can't recall his face. She spoke with eyes as pure as a young girl's. Looking into her eyes, I recalled the days from when we met to when we parted, but those memories weren't the same as hers. So you can't be sure I'm Keith. She smiled and said, if my parents say so, it must be true. Besides, I can't remember, but I'm sure you are Keith. Then she shared with me all the memories she could recall. There was nothing incorrect, but she had completely forgotten our fights and the days before our divorce. There was no way I could tell her. Lily, with her fragmented memory, loved me as she had in the past and cared for me, the very thing I had hoped for those 5 years. But it was just because she had lost her memory. Feeling incredible guilt, I asked, can I come here again? She answered, of course. I couldn't return her smile as well as she did. After that, I visited her frequently. Her parents told me, we just want to make the current Lily happy, so please keep visiting her. Could you tell me more about us? I want to remember more. It must have been happy days, she often said. Each time, I only spoke of the good memories. Couldn't tell her about how I had neglected her, not in front of her smiling face. Those days continued for months. I explained the situation to my parents, and they also met Lily a few times, naturally keeping our marriage a secret. However, her memory never returned. She'd enjoyed her days with me. Finally, she was about to be discharged. She would still need regular checkups, but there were no issues with her daily life. In the end, I never could tell her the truth, neither about our marriage nor the divorce. I felt a guilt even greater than the regrets of those 5 years. Then, a while after her discharge, a family gathering was arranged to celebrate her return home. Everyone was lying to keep her fragile happiness intact. However, perhaps relaxed by her healthy appearance, her father slipped up, saying, it's been since the wedding that we all gathered like this. The atmosphere froze in an instant. Whose wedding? Lily asked. Her parents quickly tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. I understood everyone's feelings, but ultimately it was my responsibility. Besides, I didn't want to lie to Lily, the woman I loved, anymore. Actually, we used to be married, I said, standing up and looking straight into her surprised eyes. But we got divorced. It was my fault. I couldn't stop the tears of shame. Everyone else in the room was silent, and only the sound of my sobbing filled the space. What do you mean? Lily's trembling voice came through. I told her everything about our marriage and how I had neglected her, which led to our divorce. I'm truly sorry. I took advantage of the fact that you didn't remember. I was ready for whatever she would say. In the end, I was just being selfish and causing trouble for everyone. I shouldn't have been the one crying there at that moment. Lily gently placed her hand on my shoulder. Then let's get married again, Keith. Her voice was unbelievably kind. Led by her hand, I raised my head to meet her eyes. Indeed, I had forgotten your face and our marriage, and I still can't remember clearly. But I do remember that I loved you. Her firm voice continued to resonate in the room, and I still love you now. I want to be loved by you again, including all the sad memories. Her words soaked into my heart. The regrets and guilt I had wouldn't disappear. But finally, I saw a bright path forward, the direction I needed to go. Lily, let's get married. I hugged her while crying with sobs. Our parents also cried tears of joy as they blessed us. Lily held me tightly and whispered in my ear, "It feels like this has happened before." "Yes, but I won't let you forget again," I promised her. A few days later, we officially remarried and started living together anew. Lily's memory isn't perfect, but now that's okay. If there's something she forgets, I'll teach her. My role isn't just that. I aim to make the fun memories even more fun and to transform the sad memories into happy ones. This is what I have vowed in my heart.
I'm planning a trip with your grandparents. I said, what about you? Do you have any plans? I called my son Anthony after my in-laws invited us on a vacation. I have practice, so you all should go and have fun. But isn't this trip a bit out of the ordinary? Are you okay, Mom? I'll manage. I'll bring you back a souvenir. Work hard at your practice. Ensign, under my influence, has always been into marathon running. He even got into college on a running scholarship. He studies at a nearby university but stays in the dorms to save commuting time, coming home only during long holidays. I knew he could have joined the trip, but I thought I should at least ask him. His response was exactly what I anticipated. My name is Flora, a 46-year-old working woman. My husband, Steve, is 4 years older and was once my boss. He's competent, and I respect him. After our marriage and the birth of our son, we built a happy family. Yet somewhere along the way, our relationship began to break down. The root cause: my husband's parents, especially his mother, who had a problem with me from the moment we married and has been bullying me ever since. Initially, Steve stood up for me, and because we lived far away from his parents, we seldom met them and managed to get by. But when our son, who loves marathoning, wanted to attend a high school near my in-laws, things changed. The reason he got into running was me. I used to run marathons and still do occasionally. It made me happy to see him take an interest in running just like me, so I convinced Steve to move closer to the high school my son wanted to attend. Steve applied for a transfer at work for our son's sake, and we moved. My son was recommended for his university from this high school, so I think it worked out well. Go get the rental car tomorrow morning and pick up my parents on your way back, Steve said the day before our trip. This left me confused. Huh? Why am I the one renting the car? What are you going to do? I'm tired from work, so I'll sleep until the last minute. Once you pick up my parents, come back and I'll take over from there. It's in the same direction as our destination anyway. I could understand what he was saying, but if anything, I was more exhausted. Despite working similar hours, I was the one taking care of all the housework. When I think about it, we used to split the household chores equally. However, ever since we moved closer to his parents, they've been visiting us frequently. When his mother saw Steve doing housework, she vehemently opposed it. Housework is the wife's job. It's not something the breadwinner should do. Isn't that right, Flora? Overwhelmed by her intensity, I initially nodded in agreement. This continued until Steve eventually stopped doing anything around the house. It was partly Steve's fault, but I believe the main cause was his mother. Moreover, Steve started to echo his mother's sentiment, saying, "I am the breadwinner," every now and then. By that time, it was too late for me to correct the situation, and I didn't even feel like trying anymore. Steve changed drastically over the past few years. His work performance seemed to have declined, and he frequently vented his frustrations on me. However, I realized that arguing back was more trouble than it was worth, so I decided to simply accept things as they are. That's the least stressful way for me to live. There were times I considered getting a divorce, but when it came time for our son's college recommendation, I feared it could disadvantage him if we were a single-parent family, so I couldn't go through with the divorce. Instead, I tricked my mind into believing I was taking care of a dog, not a person, and surprisingly, it did relieve some of my stress. So I began to feel like it wasn't worth expending my energy on getting a divorce, and that's how I've arrived at where I am today. The reason I agreed to join this trip was because it was to a resort that I absolutely love. I knew I could thoroughly enjoy myself even if I ended up doing things alone. Heck, I was even ready to do things separately from my in-laws and husband. Perhaps I was invited mainly because they needed someone to share the driving, but both my husband and my father-in-law can drive, so it'll work out one way or another. Anyway, I played along with the notion that our pampered pooch was being demanding again, went to get the rental car as my husband instructed, and headed to my in-laws' place. Flora, you're late. Is that the car for today? You should have rented a bigger one. Well, it's better than your tiny car at least. The car we usually use is the one I bought since I drive to work. I assumed I would be the primary user and I pay for it myself. We don't go out of town often, so I thought a small car would be just fine. I loved its interior design and color, so I bought it. Yet my husband would take it without asking and even let his parents ride in it. My in-laws complained about the car being small and looked down on me as if I could only afford a small car. I thought they could just use my father-in-law's car for the trip. However, he didn't like others driving his car and didn't want to drive it himself for the entire trip, so we ended up renting a car. Even so, I wasn't consulted about any of this. I just found out that I would be the one to pick up the rental car and drive it, with them in the back seat the whole time. It made me want to tell them to drive themselves. In a word, they are tiresome. In the end, my husband, who had said he would take turns driving, slept the entire time. My father-in-law didn't want to drive unless it was his own car, so I ended up driving all the way to our destination. With my husband asleep, my father-in-law kept criticizing my driving. He would say things like, "You could have turned left there," even though an oncoming car was obviously approaching, or "Why didn't you go," even though the light was turning red. It was nothing but unnecessary stress. My mother-in-law joined in, saying, "Flora, your driving is as bad as ever." I didn't want to be criticized by a woman who can't even drive. At least I'm better than my father-in-law, who, as far as I know, has crashed his car at least 5 times. Despite being told he should surrender his license before causing a major accident, my mother-in-law kept insisting it was just bad luck and that he is a good driver. Well, I didn't want to ride in a car driven by my father-in-law anyway. I don't mind driving, but I'd appreciate it if they could stop interfering all the time. Upon reaching our destination, my husband finally woke up. Since we had been in the car all day and were tired, we followed my in-laws' wish to spend the day relaxing in the hotel, so we didn't go out. I enjoyed myself by swimming in the pool and exploring the hotel. It was a fulfilling time. After having dinner and going to the spa, I returned to find my husband already asleep. I didn't know what my in-laws were doing in the next room, but they were probably asleep too. I had a beer in the room before crawling into bed. I woke up in the fresh morning air. My husband was still asleep, and with some time until breakfast, I decided to take a morning stroll. But when I came back, the unthinkable had happened. Upon entering the room, my husband was nowhere to be found. Shocked, I scanned the room. His luggage was also missing. I stepped out and rang the doorbell to my in-laws' room next door, but there was no answer. When I went to the front desk to inquire, I was told my husband and in-laws had already finished breakfast. Though they had told me breakfast was at 8:30, it seems they actually reserved it an hour earlier, exactly when I had gone for my walk. On top of that, I was left to check out. Did that mean my mother-in-law's offer to pay for our stay was a lie? With no other option, I paid for both rooms and left the hotel. Of course, there was no car. As I was pondering what to do next, my cell phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. "Where are you now?" When I asked that, my mother-in-law started laughing. "We're having quality time as a family since we're on vacation." "Oh, is that so? Well then, why didn't you just come as 3 from the start instead of leaving me behind?" "Well, you wanted to come here, didn't you, Flora? That's why we brought you along." I remembered mentioning how I wanted to visit this resort a while back, while watching TV with my husband. Is that what he remembered? Usually it would be nice if he remembered what I casually said, but this time it was used just to annoy me. Moreover, I was the one who did most of the driving to get here. Why do I have to hear that I was brought here by my mother-in-law, who never drove nor paid? I was past the point of anger and could only sigh. "All right then, we'll go sightseeing as a family and head home first. You do some sightseeing too, Flora, and come back. We don't know how you'll get back, but you're good at marathons, aren't you? Just run back," my mother-in-law mocked. At her laughter, my anger exploded. "Is Steve driving? Put me on speakerphone so he can hear me." When I said that, it seemed my mother-in-law switched over, and I could hear my husband's voice. "Good morning. You wanted to come here, didn't you? Take it easy today, but remember there's laundry from the trip to be done. Make sure you wash it by tomorrow morning." He sounded cheerful. I had no more feelings for him. "Do your own laundry." "Hey, that's no way to talk. I'm the breadwinner, and telling you to take it easy today. You should be saying thank you." "Oh right, the breadwinner. But don't worry, this is the last time we'll see each other. Well, all you've really seen of me is me sleeping. What do you mean? We need to come home today. There's laundry and house cleaning to be done. Yeah, that's why I'm not going back. What are you talking about? His voice was shaken. I'm getting a divorce. You told me half a year ago, didn't you, that you met your soulmate, your childhood friend, and you were going to marry her? You reunited when she moved back to your hometown, right? The childhood friend who had divorced. Remember you showed me the divorce papers? About 6 months ago, I confronted my husband because something felt off, and he came clean. He had met his childhood friend and decided she was his soulmate. He wanted to divorce me and remarry her. She had a middle school-aged child and was struggling as a single mother, and he wanted to support her. So he asked me for a divorce. Truthfully, I had lost my feelings for my husband, but I wasn't quite ready to say, okay, let's get a divorce. He gave me the pre-filled divorce papers, but I didn't agree to divorce. We didn't speak for a few days after that, but when I stopped doing the household chores, he was in a bind. A few days later, he said, forget about what I said before. Well, I couldn't just forget it, and I started gathering evidence of his infidelity. Could it be that Steve planned this trick to get on my good side? I mused. The conversation happened about 3 months ago. It was right after you quit your job, I said. Surprised voices from my in-laws on the other end of the speakerphone echoed. This must have been the first time they heard about their son quitting his job. When you said you were quitting your job, I told you it would be hard to get a new job, and I disagreed with your reason, right? I recalled you said that you were an excellent worker and would find a new job right away, but you only found a part-time job. I wonder when you'll find a proper job. My husband was driving and staying quiet, so I took the opportunity to spill everything. I've been coping with stress by imagining you as a dog, but then I thought I might as well get an actual dog, I declared. So I'll submit the divorce papers. Enjoy your family vacation. My in-laws were calling my name in shock, and my husband was trying to say something, but I cut the call without paying any attention. I decided to enjoy sightseeing before heading home. When I explained the situation over the phone to my son, he said, I told you. Well, if you're divorcing, that's fine, Anson said. His reaction was lighter than I expected, given he knew the situation. After returning from the trip, I didn't go home. I had been keeping mine Anson's belongings in a self-storage unit, ready for any situation. With only the bare necessities with me, I dragged my suitcase to a real estate agency. The sales representative, a woman of my generation and someone I'd had drinks with a few times, greeted me. Over those drinks, I'd often complained about my husband and in-laws and asked her to always keep an eye on available properties just in case. That day, I signed a contract for my own place. Feeling relieved, I decided to submit the divorce papers at City Hall. The divorce was granted without any issue. Finally, I returned the countless calls my husband had made. Hello, I started. The divorce papers have been accepted. We are now officially strangers. My husband's panicked voice echoed through the phone. Are you serious about the divorce? I broke up with her. Now, there's only you. You didn't like me looking at other women, right? Now I'm only looking at you, so come back without worries. But all I felt for his words was revulsion. Huh, what are you talking about? I never intended to please you in the first place. And you didn't break up with her, did you? You were dumped because you couldn't find a job and had no money, right? It turned out that my husband's mistress was a friend of the sales rep who had introduced us to her new place. Talk about a small world. She had been listening to complaints about my husband from the mistress who claimed to be his current girlfriend. Apparently, after he quit his job and started working part-time, she saw no point in being with him and broke up. But a fling is a fling. I'm definitely going to demand compensation. Compensation? I told you, we broke up. Now there's only you. I could only sigh at this point. So you're saying that now that you're single, you're thinking of having another affair? I don't care what you do, but I'm done being exploited. You didn't even notice that your stuff at home was missing because you didn't care, did you? I'm not going back, so throw away what you don't need. With that, I hung up the phone. Even after that, my ex-husband kept calling me, and even my former in-laws reached out. But of course, I'm never going back to that house. My ex-husband still hasn't found a job, can't pay the rent, and has moved back in with his parents. My ex-father-in-law is still driving dangerously and recently crashed into a neighbor's fence with my ex-mother-in-law in the car. Fortunately, no one else was injured, but they didn't have property insurance and had to borrow money to cover the repair costs. All of this was written in emails that my ex-husband kept sending me on his own. I find his misfortune slightly amusing. I don't reply, but I haven't blocked his emails either, just quietly enjoying the show. Since I moved to a pet-friendly property, I started keeping a small dog and realized that I enjoy taking care of a dog more than taking care of people. My son, worried about me being alone, has started coming over on weekends, a change from his previous habit of only visiting on long holidays. I'm living a fulfilling life every day. Maybe this weekend, I'll go back to that resort town for the first time in a while. Help me, brother, I cried as I stumbled into my brother's place in the middle of a freezing winter night, wearing ragged clothes and holding a baby in my arms. My brother was speechless at the sight of me, so changed and frail, clad only in a tattered shirt and barefoot. What on earth happened? He quickly asked, ushering me into the house and warming up the room. The baby, wrapped in my jacket, was sound asleep, but I couldn't stop shivering. Who did this to my precious little sister? My brother muttered through clenched teeth. Lily, it's going to be okay now. Upon hearing my brother's gentle voice, I felt a wave of relief wash over me as if all the strength had drained from my body. My name is Lily, a 27-year-old homemaker with a young son. I was once a nurse until Terry, the son of the hospital director, proposed to me. Terry was kind and efficient in his work, which initially attracted me to him. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me, and after our parents' tragic death in a car accident when I was 4 and he was in 3rd grade, he became my protector. Our parents died when their car was hit head-on by a truck whose driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. My mother, also a nurse, was working late, and it happened when my father went to pick her up. Before leaving to pick her up, my father had casually told my brother, Derek, I'm counting on you to take care of Lily. These words became unforgettable for my brother, who took them to heart and has protected me ever since. We never fought. He has always been like a superhero to me. After the accident, it seemed my brother and I would be sent to separate foster homes. However, our paternal grandparents, who we hadn't interacted much with until then, took us in. When I first met our grandfather, his white hair and bushy beard made him look like a storybook Santa Claus. Seeing Derek, he muttered, "You're the spitting image of your father," and I believe I saw tears in his eyes. Our grandmother was a kind woman who hugged me tightly and sobbed, "Poor child." Later, I learned that our father had fallen out with our grandfather, leaving home in what amounted to running away. Our grandfather wanted him to continue the family business, but our father wanted his freedom. Neither would yield, and they ended up parting on bad terms. Derek and I moved to our grandparents' house nestled in the rural mountains. Our grandfather, a renowned potter, created works so famous that a single teacup could sell for thousands of dollars. Thanks to this, Derek and I grew up without financial difficulties. Our grandfather was stubborn, hated dishonesty, and dedicated himself completely to his work, while our grandmother was incredibly kind. Despite our parents no longer being with us, under our grandparents' watchful eyes, we grew up happily. Derek attended a prestigious university in the city, and I went to nursing school. We both had the chance to follow our dreams. However, when our grandmother's health deteriorated, Derek returned home from the city. I wanted to return too, but as I was still a student, Derek advised against it. Derek had always been interested in our grandfather's work, but was firmly told to follow his own path, leading him to university. I think our grandfather regretted forcing our deceased father to continue the family business and didn't want his grandchildren to go through the same thing. However, Derek insisted on being taught pottery by our grandfather. He had always been handy, making pottery a good fit for him. Besides, Derek excelled at everything: academics, sports, and he was popular among his friends. He was truly a superhero, taking care of our sick grandmother while mastering the art of pottery. While learning the trade from our grandfather, I graduated from nursing school and started working as a nurse. That's when Terry proposed, and we got married. We had a grand wedding, and what I remember most are the joyous smiles of Derek and our grandfather. Derek brought pictures of our parents to the wedding. "We all just want you to be happy, Lily, including Mom and Dad," he said, shedding tears openly. Our grandmother, too ill to attend, cried tears of joy when she saw the video of the ceremony. I felt truly blessed with a great family. I quit my job as a nurse, moved into my husband Terry's family home, and began to support him as a full-time homemaker. We had a child, and Terry was kind. Our life seemed smooth sailing, and I couldn't have imagined the hellish days that were to come. Not long after my grandmother passed away, Terry attended the funeral with me and comforted me. My grandfather's disappointment was so severe that I couldn't even speak to him. Derek, while supporting our grandfather, immersed himself more and more into his pottery. 6 months passed. "Help me, brother," I cried as I fled to my brother's place in the middle of a freezing winter night, wearing ragged clothes and holding a baby in my arms. Derek was at a loss for words upon seeing my drastically changed appearance. I was so skinny and weak, just wearing a thin, tattered shirt and barefoot. What on earth happened? He quickly let me in and warmed up the room. The baby wrapped in my coat was sound asleep, but I couldn't stop shivering. "Who did this to my dear sister?" Derek murmured through clenched teeth. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as if all strength had left my body. I didn't want to worry Derek or our grandfather, but I had no choice but to tell them. I began to recount the events at my in-laws' house. Terry and I had been living together, but due to my in-laws' concern that I should rest during and after pregnancy, we moved into their house. My in-laws, both remarried, seemed like a genuinely close family. Terry was the stepson of my mother-in-law. I was happy that my child and I could become part of this family. My father-in-law was kind to me, telling me to make myself at home. Having no father, his kindness was precious to me. However, my mother-in-law seemed not to like this. "You're flirting with my husband, aren't you, you disgusting woman?" she began to say. She started harassing me when my father-in-law was not around. "You're an uneducated child with no parents," she said, not just verbally abusing me, but also causing physical harm. She spilled boiling water towards me, planted pins in my meals, and even tried to push me down the stairs. It was life-threatening. My mother-in-law's family had a long-standing reputation in the retail business, managing a major department store chain run by her brother. "Your background is miles apart from mine. You can't blend with someone who grew up in poverty," she said, looking down on me. Then, a situation arose that added to my troubles. With a shortage of staff at the hospital, a former nurse was often called in to help, working alongside my husband Terry. During this time, I noticed something unsettling. Terry, being the son of the hospital director, was often seen reprimanding the nurses unreasonably. "Move quicker. You're a nurse getting paid, aren't you? Don't slack off just because my father is lenient. Once I take over this hospital, I won't be so forgiving. How many times do I have to tell you? Order the supplies in advance. They're not cheap, you know. Don't take running a hospital lightly." Such unreasonable remarks were directed at nurses who were working hard for the patients. "Terry, don't you think that's too harsh? Everyone here is trying their best," I interjected. He didn't take kindly to this. Furious that I had stood up to him, he flew off the handle in front of the other nurses. Since then, Terry became distant towards me. It might have also been influenced by my mother-in-law, who had been telling Terry from the start, "You're too soft on your wife. She's taking you for granted." While my father-in-law was still well, Terry couldn't be openly hostile or abusive in front of him. But then my father-in-law fell seriously ill and became bedridden. When it rains, it pours. My mother-in-law seized the opportunity and made me take care of all the chores, treating me like a housekeeper. I was extremely busy carrying my son on my back, cooking, doing laundry, and cleaning. Even in front of my father-in-law, my mother-in-law began to mistreat me, but my weakened father-in-law was unable to stop her. "Please don't speak to Lily that way," he would say. "Here you go again defending that woman, and you can't even do anything with your frail body. Oh, how I wish you were gone," she would retort, spewing venom at my sick father-in-law. I endured it for the sake of my son and father-in-law. The harassment escalated. "Housekeepers don't eat with the family. Eat the leftovers later," she told me. I was so upset that I lost my appetite. When I looked in the mirror, I was shocked to see my gaunt and ragged reflection. My husband said, "I only married you because you were a bit attractive, but I never thought you'd become such a shabby woman. I'm too embarrassed to be seen with you." He told me to move from our bedroom to the storeroom. How cruel can people be? My husband and mother-in-law began to verbally abuse even my son. "Of course he's not smart. Look at who his mother is," my mother-in-law would say. "His constant crying is annoying. Make him stop right now," my husband would demand. It felt as if something inside me had snapped. I had made up my mind to run away. My only concern was my father-in-law. If I didn't take care of him, he would be in trouble. However, my father-in-law said, "Don't worry about me, Lily. You should escape to your brother's place." He pulled out several $100 bills from under his pillow and pressed them into my hand. I decided to flee on the spot in the clothes I was wearing. I wrapped my son in my coat to keep him warm, rushed outside, hailed a taxi with the money my father-in-law had given me, and headed to my grandfather's house. I poured out the whole story to my grandfather and my brother Derek all at once. Derek, making a furious face I had never seen before, was shaking his clenched fist. Derek reassured me, saying, "You've had it tough, haven't you? It's okay now, relax." I burst into tears. My grandfather also muttered, "I can't forgive this." A few days later, I left my son with my grandfather and decided to return to my in-laws' house with Derek to collect my belongings. I had left in a hurry without a word, so I thought it would cause trouble if there was any fuss. When we returned to my in-laws' house, my husband muttered with a cold gaze, "You finally returned, huh?" Derek calmly replied, "My sister seems very distressed, so we'll be taking care of her for a while. We came today to collect some of her personal belongings." My husband retorted, "I married her, so if she doesn't come back, there will be no one to do the chores. That's a big problem for me." My mother-in-law, looking down on Derek, said, "I heard you do pottery. It must be a poor life, isn't it? Even if you take care of my daughter-in-law, it's going to be tough for you, right? Please send her back. It's a problem for us too." Derek clenched his fists tightly. I could see that he was desperately trying to suppress his anger. When we asked to take back our belongings, we were directed to a storage room in the corner of the hallway that served as my room. In the corner of the cramped room were cardboard boxes and old appliances carelessly placed. There were a few changes of clothes for me and my son, no heating appliances, just a thin blanket and a thin mattress. Derek was at a loss for words, seeing the harsh conditions I was living under. When he glared at my mother-in-law, saying, "Is this where you shoved my dear sister and her child?" she retorted, "She should be grateful just to have a room. She's just a housekeeper." I wanted to get out of that house as soon as possible, but I was worried about my father-in-law and wanted to see him. When I did, he quietly handed me something and apologized to Derek for not being able to protect me. For several days after that, we made preparations. Along with my grandfather and Derek, I headed to my in-laws' house. I was determined to fight for my son. I couldn't keep running away forever. When we arrived, I handed my husband the divorce papers. He was taken aback for a moment, but then declared he wouldn't pay alimony or child support since I was choosing to leave. I played a recording of his mother belittling me and him shouting at me. "This is evidence of the abuse I suffered," I informed them. My husband and mother-in-law looked shocked, asking, "When did you even record this?" It turns out my father-in-law had secretly recorded everything to help me. He had discreetly passed the recording to me when I went to collect my things a few days before. Derek, who had graduated from law school and passed the bar exam while assisting our grandfather with his pottery work, said I could get a divorce since my husband was at fault. Derek had been actively practicing law to help those in need in our local community, and now he promised to fight for me wholeheartedly. My wheelchair-bound father-in-law showed up and handed the divorce papers to my mother-in-law. He had also recorded all the verbal abuse he had endured and was now ready to divorce as well. He preferred living in a care facility over living with my mother-in-law. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law burst into laughter. "I'll gladly divorce you and return to my brother's house and go back to my luxurious life," she said. At that moment, my grandfather made a call stating, "I'll terminate any contracts with a family like this." It turns out the major department store run by my mother-in-law's brother was on the verge of bankruptcy. He had been eagerly trying to strike a deal to exhibit and sell my famous grandfather's pottery and was close to finalizing it. Immediately, a call came from her brother, the department store owner, severing ties. My mother-in-law blanched, muttering, "That's impossible," and sank to her knees. She finally seemed to understand her situation and started to beg. "Please forgive me. I was out of line. I have nowhere else to go. Please let me stay here, Lily. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." There was no way we could forgive her now. We all coldly stared at my weeping mother-in-law. However, just one person still didn't seem to fully grasp the situation. It was my husband. He said to me, "I'm set to inherit this hospital. If you want a divorce, I'll pay alimony and child support. I'll marry someone younger and prettier than you." But then my father-in-law said a single sentence, "The hospital has been sold." My husband's eyes widened in shock. What? In fact, Terry, requested by my father-in-law, had been pulling the strings. "Get out of here right now," my father-in-law screamed at his stepson. My husband's face turned white. He was not legally adopted by my father-in-law, who was actually his stepfather, so he had no legal claim on his stepfather's assets. On the contrary, I was legally adopted by my father-in-law, who had taken good care of me. Sensing the tide of events, my husband quickly changed his tune, pleading for a fresh start with me. I coldly dismissed him. Afterwards, my son and I were doted on and enjoyed life at my grandparents' house. He now cried less often and spent his time playing in nature, finding flowers and insects. My in-laws divorced. The audio tape proved crucial in establishing the fault of my mother-in-law. According to mutual acquaintances, my mother-in-law and husband are now living in a small rented apartment. Their attempts at finding new jobs had gone well, and they seem to be getting by on part-time work. Their days are filled with endless quarrels, each blaming the other for their current situation. My grandfather is living comfortably in a high-end senior home, and my son and I visit him often. Derek, as always, continues to work with pottery under my grandfather's guidance. My mother-in-law's brother, who wasn't at fault, held the pottery exhibition at a department store. At the exhibition, my brother met a lovely woman who was a fan of pottery, and they started dating. I expect we'll hear good news from him soon. I work as a nurse at a hospital near my grandfather's house. It was my dream to become a nurse like my mother, and now I find fulfillment in caring for my patients.